Welcome aboard. This is the Miles to Go podcast. And now here's your host, Ed Pizza.
Hey guys, welcome back to the Miles to Go podcast. Fresh off of the big victory tour that Mr. Kerr has been on talking about Alaska Airlines, he is back in the chair with me again this week. And we're going to talk a little bit about that in just a moment, Mr. Kerr. We also have some follow-up from a listener for you. So all that and a whole lot more this week. How are you, sir?
I don't know. We launched Alaska 45 minutes ago. Ed's had a little play-by-play this week behind the scenes. Man, it has been, I think, the toughest week in almost 3 years. At Bilt for a lot of reasons we'll talk about. But here I am. It's Friday. Forward to the weekend.
Yeah, as you said, like literally launched it 45 minutes ago. We were talking about Anker's appearance on TV, talking about it. A little bit of a live blow. And I can see, for those not watching on video, it does appear that you have less hair. It does appear you lost.
I've gone bald for a third time this week. For a lot of reasons.
I had a good friend of mine who actually helped contribute to the leukemia fundraiser we're going to talk about in a second. He is my high school English teacher. And he says, I was looking at some of that stuff and you've got a lot of gray hair. I'm like, thanks, Neil. I appreciate your support.
Wait, he was your high school English teacher?
Yeah, he's still a good family friend. I'm actually helping him plan a trip to Iceland right now. He's my high school English teacher. We call him Uncle Neil. Kids know him well. And he's been in my March Madness pool that I've run for, 30 plus years and usually contributes to the fundraisers and stuff like that. So good friend.
He's got to be a spring chicken if he's your English high school.
he lives in upstate Vermont and yeah, he is like, if I'm old, he's dirt. So yeah.
Well, Neil, I don't know you, but welcome to the chatter. I didn't insult you, Ed did, so I was looking forward to chatting one day.
I insult him frequently, so it's not a problem. He's used to it. A little bit of housekeeping and then some follow-up for you, Mr. Kerr. On the housekeeping side of things, he is at Kerr Points on all of those social media channels. I am at Pizza in Motion. And for as long as TikTok still exists, depending on how our government is doing, at Miles to Go Podcast on TikTok and Instagram is how you would find us there. Mr. Kerr, you've been going a little bit viral with a video over there, too. Pretty exciting. You have virality and vitality all in one.
Vitality, yeah. I would say that, I don't know, you should be the judge. 30% of my texts contain typos these days because I just don't care. I don't have time to go back and correct it. And it'll be a day later and I'll be like, that's an important word. I should fix that. But I'm just moving too fast these days.
I don't judge anybody else on their text, but I always spell check my own. I'm just a nerd that way. I'm a nerd in many ways, but that's another way. But a quick bit of listener follow up. People do keep us honest, Mr. Kerr, and I had forgotten a bit of follow up for you last week. So Paul asked for an official update from you after your Disney trip on whether or not you managed to get one of these buttons. For those that are not viewing the show, I'm holding up my Galactic Hero button. So for the record, Mr. Kerr, I know the answer, but for the record, did you get the button?
They don't exist anymore.
Mm-hmm.
And it has been downgraded to a 1.5 cent sticker for the Galactic Hero if you max out the score on Buzz Lightyear's Space Ranger spin, which we pretty much do every time unless you get a bad gun or something. So actually, Jose, our VIP tour did not know that was a thing. And I asked him, I was like, hey, can we get a Galactic Hero button? And he was like, well, what? And I was like, the buttons for maxing out the score. And he was like, that's a thing? And I was like, oh man, I'm about to teach a VIP tour or something. We went up to the little kiosk at the store right there at the exit of the Buzz Lightyear ride and asked the lady, the lovely cast member, said, hey, here's a picture of my score. Do you have a Galactic Hero button? And she was like, oh, yep, here you go. And she pulled out this 1.5 cent sticker. And I was like, oh, you don't have the buttons anymore? And Jose, our guide, is standing next to me with his mind. He's like, I cannot believe that nobody has taught me this before and that you taught me something today. But no more buttons, just a sticker. So sad.
I still think the buttons exist though, because I've gotten stickers for a couple of years and then I got the button like a month ago. So I don't know. I think we need better information. I think we should go to Disney. Anyway.
I'm sure we will.
Couple more things from listeners. One, a little bit of follow-up that I wanted to read. I wanted to thank everybody who supported my daughter's fundraiser for leukemia and lymphoma. I think one of the reasons why it's been meaningful to her both last year and this year is the friends that help support it. So Richard and Mike and Summer and Gary, hunting down people from different states to help us fill out the 50-state challenge. But also too, we've gotten all these stories from folks, and I wanted to read one. Teresa sent an email to us and she said, hi Ed, I just want to say thank you to both you and your daughter for raising funds for the Leukemia and Lymphoma Society and for raising awareness. I'm making a donation and subscribing to the YouTube channel, which is great. That means that she helped us get to both of Kat's goals and take more money out of my wallet. This fundraiser, she says, is especially meaningful to me since my dad was diagnosed with multiple myeloma over 5 years ago. He is doing well, and his cancer is now maintained at an undetectable level, thanks in part to treatment he had covered through a grant from the Leukemia Lymphoma Society that would have otherwise been prohibitively expensive. So it's stories like that I don't want to sound like a softie, but my daughter's come to me a couple times after she's read things like this and said, like, hey, this is why I'm doing this. Like, I love hearing these stories from people, even when the stories are sad. It's good to hear the engagement, and it's good to hear about organizations that are doing good things out there. So Teresa, glad to hear your dad's doing okay, and really appreciate the donation.
Nice. Well done, Kat, and everybody who helped this week. I saw that flying back and forth through the text messages and some stuff on Twitter, and I was like, man, I should really be doing more here.
Everybody pitched in, and we got all 50 again. So it's a fun one. So
next time you should expand it to including U.S. territories. So we got to get Puerto Rico, Virgin Islands, American Samoa. Like let's step it up next time.
All right, look, I already got crap from a friend of mine, Emily, who's like, hey, come on, expand the map. I just donated from Canada. Like, where are the Canadian territories? So like,
let's get all 193 or 195 or whatever it is now.
I think that would be a little bit nuts, but we are known to be a little bit nuts. So maybe that'll happen. All right, so let's talk about a quick listener question, and then we're going to talk the Alaska Airlines news with Bilt, and we're also going to talk a little MAX 9. So all over the board today. So Darren asked this question in the Slack community, and while it was already answered, I did want to bring it up on the show because I do think it's one of those things that maybe people forget about. So Darren asked, hello all, I was booked on an Iberia flight tomorrow with my family in premium economy with points. I'm now finding out that they have changed equipment and there is no premium economy on this aircraft configuration. Any advice on what a reasonable remedy for this situation? And with the advent of premium economy, Richard, like this has come up more because not every plane has the same configuration.
Yeah, big bummer there. A few things you can do. One is ask to change your travel dates until there is premium economy. Well, before we say it, let me preface this. Every airline handles this different. Every phone agent will handle this different. I cannot guarantee anything, but here's what I would do.
Yeah.
I would call and see what they offer first without making a suggestion. Sometimes they will give you the price difference. Sometimes they will give you all your miles back. Very rare. Sometimes they'll offer you a travel date change or a departing city change until you can, get to a place where that plane that day is flying in premium economy. Probably, there's no good answer here, man. I don't think there's no good resolution. The last thing that I would ask for is, hey, can we do a bump up into business? Again, ask for the world, expect nothing, and if something incredibly favorable works out for you, then be happy. Because I've made asks like that before where there's no reason why it should have happened. You just have the right phone agent that's empowered the right way, and they're in business class. So ask for everything and see what happens.
Yeah, and then after the fact, as I noted in the Slack community, this should technically qualify for EU 261 credit. Now, that doesn't help you in the moment, but it is considered an involuntary downgrade because premium economy is a ticketed cabin. So it's not like economy plus seating in the US. You're buying a specific cabin of ticket. So if you are ultimately downgraded to coach, then you do have an argument to apply for EU 261 coverage. And I don't remember the dollar amounts, but suffice to say that there is some level of protection. Whether it covers what you spent, highly variable, but definitely something to consider in the grand scheme of things.
Yep. Ask for everything is my advice.
All right. Well, let's roll it out. As you said, I've heard all not all, but I've heard plenty of behind the scenes stuff, but we are officially here as of now, an hour ago, live with the new Bilt Alaska Airlines partnership, which is timely because, a little bit of bad news coming out of Bilt this week in losing American as a partner, but replaced with another way to book one world carriers and an interesting new twist coming up on rent payments as well.
Yeah, very sad beginning of the week for us where we didn't, but somebody spread some news that was picked up by Gary Leff that Alaska and Bilt will be winding down our partnership. We obviously wanted this to continue for a long time. They took a leap of faith on us back in 2021 before Bilt even existed and said, yeah, even when we have no other direct transfer partners, we see the vision of Bilt. So appreciate everything from the last 3 years. We did some really cool stuff in the beginning with American. They certainly helped us a huge amount, putting us on the map right at launch by saying we have American Airlines as a transfer partner. And maybe we'll write a memoir one day of all the stuff that occurs behind these partnerships, which has been the funnest part of this job. But just a big thanks to American. And we did want to do the right thing that some programs have not done and give people plenty of lead time here. Once the news was out there and come like, yeah, let's do the right thing and say, yep, this is going to wind down in June. Give people 3 months heads up so that they can transfer. And so good news, you still got time. if you want to take advantage of that. So that was a sad start to the week, but we did get to today, Friday, as recording this, and incredibly excited to announce the new partners over in Seattle in Alaska Airlines. Everybody's like, wait a minute, Alaska Airlines is headquartered in Seattle. Yeah, tip number one there for the non-aviation nerds that are not listening to this. If you're brand new to the Miles to Go podcasts or Miles Points world, right? Alaska Airlines, fantastic program, fantastic airline. Don't know very many people who have bad things to say about Alaska compared to the way that people like to complain about every other travel provider in the world. They are obviously part of the One World, so that is very nice that we are losing America in the One World, but very quickly here replacing them with Alaska Airlines. But beyond that, man, we have a really innovative first-in-kind partnership here beyond just point transfer, which is live today in the Bilt app. But the new part that is coming later this spring is if you have an Alaska Visa signature card from Bank of America and you pay your rent through Bilt, you will earn 3x Alaska miles per dollar, up to $50,000 of rent a year, which is like $4,100 and some change a month. So if you're paying that much rent, man, I really hope you do take advantage and you'll want Alaska miles and get your 3x miles. There will be a 3% fee, and that fee is standard what we charge today with anybody. You can pay with any credit card through Bilt now, and it's a 3% fee, but you're only going to be earning whatever that credit card gives you. We wanted to sweeten the deal here and give the opportunity for our partners to win, right? Alaska and Bank of America have not had an avenue to capture rent spend on their card portfolio, except for the people that wanted to pay 3% fee for 1x mile, which is a tough value prop to sell. So by tripling that, I think that's a pretty enticing value prop for the people who really want to collect those Alaska miles. And the sweeteners on top of it, man, is Bank of America is going to count this towards a $6,000 spend for the companion pass on the card.
Oh, nice.
And the spend for the bonus EQMs as well. So like there's sweeteners along the way. We really hope a lot of people take advantage of it. And the great news here is like, look, Bilt wins in this. We get margin every time somebody pays their rent with us. The member wins with 3x miles, and Alaska and Bank of America win by capturing an entire new massive vertical of spend that has been unreachable for their card portfolio. That's the way we designed this. So look, man, a lot of great things coming. Alaska team has been so excited. If you go and even go to the Alaska newsroom today and read their release, it's obvious how excited they are. Love the way Alaska does some stuff. So, man, a lot of roller coasters this week. Ed's had a kind of a front row seat to some of the behind the scene things to make this happen. And let me tell you, when you're bringing together Bank of America and Alaska Airlines to get something done, that is challenging. When you throw in Bilt as this unknown, still proving ourselves kind of thing and making three organizations work together, like it takes a lot. But we appreciate everybody who helped us, and couldn't be more excited about the way things are rolling out and everybody's reaction, man. Like as we sit here, I had put the phone on do not disturb because ding ding buzz like how Alaska doesn't transfer anybody else, and everybody's obviously excited about it. So happy to answer any questions. And again, as always, like thanks to everybody for hanging in there this week. A bit of a roller coaster with all of us.
Yeah, you mentioned about answering questions, and we've had a bunch come up this morning in the Slack community. I did forget to tease that when we were talking housekeeping stuff earlier. So if you do want to join us, we try to do a happy hour every week, which is a Zoom meetup. We do get in, I would say, at least 2 a month, if not 3 or 4. We're working on some more in-person meetups along with the great Disneyland one that we had earlier this year. We're talking about one in Chicago and potentially one in Vegas. But if you want to spend a few bucks a month, it's sort of like our version of Patreon. You get people like Richard and me answering your questions in the community, a bunch of great folks in the community as well who've been very supportive of each other. I think the thing that I think about this Alaska relationship is that from my standpoint, I don't know if you know this about me, but I've never really played in the Alaska ecosystem. I know the value of it, but I've never had an Alaska credit card, and I've never had a way to earn their miles in any sort of plentiful amount. At the point at which Alaska was one of the more valuable programs, I was way too deep in the American Airlines AAdvantage world, trying to finish up lifetime status, only to have it degraded in value shortly thereafter. So maybe not my best choice, but I've always sort of looked from afar and seen the things that people have done with Alaska miles and sort of marveled at the value of the program. Separately from that, I've flown Alaska, a decent handful of times because they do have a pretty solid West Coast network and very friendly staff on board. It's like they don't have the ultra high-end first-class product in domestic U.S. cabins, but love their staff, and I've always enjoyed flying them. So I think the thing I'm most interested about is with them in the Bilt ecosystem, I don't necessarily need to go get an Alaska Airlines card to start potentially playing in this, in this pond. And I think, some of it will come down to the transfer bonuses. The same reason I never transferred to American was you kept throwing out these incredible transfer bonuses for me as a Bilt Platinum member to Virgin and Air France and people like that. We always talk about flexible currencies on the show, and I think this is the value of of a Bilt Rewards is that if the right offer comes up with Alaska, then great, I can transfer my miles there. If not, I've got all the other Bilt partners. But I do think that this is a net positive move for folks who are renters. I think it's a great partner to add to the mix.
Yeah, I mean, there's some other things that we're going to roll out with Alaska as well. That's just going to be more and more exciting. So a lot more to come. People who fly Alaska love Alaska. Like people who live in the Pacific Northwest and the West Coast, they love Alaska. Anytime Ed says there's something that you didn't know about me, I'm always like, really? I thought I knew. So I did not know that you've never had the Alaska card. I've had the Alaska card a couple times. I usually keep about 100,000 Alaska miles just because of their partner network to see what's going on there. Right. I will certainly be participating in the transfers to Alaska. But living in Atlanta, man, they have one daily flight from Atlanta to Seattle. I took that a few times when we lived back up in Seattle. Other than that, no really reason to fly Alaska. So I've had the card and keep that stashed there. But they're just a really cool team, man. Like the team's personality comes out in how the airline operates and why people like it. It's just really cool. Yeah. To work with them and see how they do things a little bit different. So exciting things ahead. And everybody the card offer, again, if you're a renter, there's a reason to get an Alaska card now. I think if you're going to get the 3X miles plus whatever welcome offer they have, plus the other sweeteners. But that rolls out this spring, but again, transfers are live today, and plenty more to come between Bilt and Alaska.
Yeah, and I would echo your comments on the Alaska team. I was introduced to them by Randy Peterson a number of years ago in terms of some Freddie Award stuff, and just found them so awesome to deal with. I mean, the energy that they go about their day, I just have always loved their energy, and I imagine that part was pretty fun for you. I too have one daily flight out of my home airport, Dulles to Seattle, and I have flown Alaska a number of times on that route because it's timed well for me. So last thing on Bilt before we veer over into the world of Boeing, we had a few people who left us reviews, and they were 5-star reviews, thankfully. But they have said that maybe we have too many Bilt things in the episode, and we talked a little bit about this behind the scenes, Jeremiah and I. We did talk about potentially killing the ding in maybe one episode. I loved his idea. It was like you and I would say Bilt 7,000 times, and the ding would finally fall over and die in some sort of explosion during the episode, and we would retire it. But I'm just not ready to do that yet. But I heard it, and Jeremiah is going to dial the dings back a bit. So if they annoy you, you will hear less of them. But I don't know that they're going to go completely away yet, just because I do like the torment, Mr. Kerr.
Look, I mean, I know we talk about it's my day-to-day life. It's the insights that I get every day at work now, and every night at work, and every weekend at work, and everything that we work here. And it's just been it's been what I hope it had been when I decided that I wanted to join the industry side. Now it's been almost 3 years at Bilt, man. I cannot believe that.
Wow, we're getting old. You must be almost 30 now.
I must be almost 30. Yeah, I've aged more than 3 years in the last 3 years.
Yes, you have.
But it's been like the opportunity to go from consumer quote unquote expert or whatever to understanding the economics, the finances, the dynamics, the politics. But the mechanics of how these things come to life, the technology of how a Bilt point becomes an Alaska mile, which is squarely what I'm in charge of, or one of the things I'm in charge of. It's just been awesome. And it's exciting to do this podcast every week to be able to give people as much of an insight as I can, because I used to be you. If you're listening to this, I was you. Regardless of where you are on the spectrum of points to miles user, miles to go listener, I remember 2010 and 11 having the first aha moment when I got my Chase Sapphire Preferred, my Delta Gold Sky Miles, and redeemed those points for a trip to Hawaii, being like, holy cow. And then all the way through becoming like really going down the rabbit hole, spending all the free hours, like to be able to be you and then come here and understand the full 360 of the business has just been everything I hoped it would be. It's been incredibly difficult, but it's really cool. And that's why we talk about Bilt, not because I'm trying to shill Bilt or whatever word you guys and gals want to use listening to this.
Love that word.
Be a Bilt member, don't be a Bilt member, but I hope you gain insight into how this industry works. So that if you hate Bilt, but you love AMX, or you hate AMX, but you love Chase, or whoever, you understand why these things happen. Because I can tell you, reading comments and things this week, they're the exact, like when the American news came out, reading the comments and the speculation and all this stuff, and then reading just right before we got on this morning, 30 minutes of comments about Alaska. It is difficult now reading these, knowing, because I would have made the same comments. I would have written the same thing in my columns. I would have speculated the same things. But now that you have the subject matter expert, like I want you guys to know how difficult it is to read some of these things, because it's just, yeah, man, it's, again, we'll save it for the memoir one day when I'm not working.
Well, I know how much goes into what you do, and I have a lot of respect for it. And I think, from my standpoint, the reason why I don't mind talking about Bilt as much as we do is because I do think it offers a ton of value. And not a Bilt example, but the reason why I love writing the blog, the reason why I love responding to people on Instagram, the reason why I love doing the podcast is it's that aha moment. Somebody I work with who I would call a friend at this point, Todd, reached out to me a handful of days ago because he wanted to get his daughter a credit card. And don't worry, Richard, I did recommend the Bilt card for her. She's a renter. So
again, we're not here to shill the Bilt card. We are here to
working hard for you, man. But I also recommended, because she's in Boston, I also recommend the AMX Gold to her. She goes out to eat a lot, and he carries the Delta Reserve card because he lives in New York. And I've joked around with him a few times about why I don't want you spending on that card.
Why does that dictate he has to have the Delta Reserve card?
Right. Right. Well, no, because he loves he loves Delta, and so I'm like, well, I go, so I go, well, we're spelling out these examples for your daughter. Let me give you an example. And I called him because I'd sent him the email, and I know you've had this moment with people before. And I call him like, hey, by the way, did you read the email? He's like, I glanced at it, and so I'm like, let me give you an example, because some people need to hear it, some people need to see it written. I go, if you go out to dinner tonight, you spend $100 on dinner, you're going to get 100 Delta Sky Miles with that card that's in your wallet that costs $650. Is it $650 now or $695?
Yes,
it's
whatever.
Some large egregious amount of money. He's like, right, got it. I go, and then you got the AMX Gold card. I go, it's $250 annual fee, so less than half of what you're paying. He's like, right, got it. I go, if you put that same $100 dinner on there, instead of 100 Sky Miles, you're going to get 400 Sky Miles. And he stops. He goes, wait, what? Yeah. I said, yeah, that's the value of the bonuses. And the light bulb went on. Like, I could hear the light bulb going on. He's like, I can do that for all of my dining? Like, yes, you can do that for all of your dining. And he's like, oh, now I get it. And it's that aha moment that I love.
You are kinder than me, because I quit writing those kinds of emails about 7 years ago, because people were like, yeah, I glanced. I'm like, why am I spending my time? I don't respond to those messages. I don't write those emails. You are kinder than I. But if somebody wants to chat about it, then I'll happily try and explain that to them.
All right, so let's talk a little bit of Boeing. As the old bumper sticker goes, if it ain't Boeing, I ain't going, has taken a pretty serious dent over the past handful of months. So I had a friend of mine who's an influencer, and I won't necessarily share her name because I didn't ask her about it ahead of time, but we had a private discussion last night. It started 2 days ago, and then it got going last night in sort of like in a little bit of a, not fever pitch, but like it was a pretty lengthy discussion. And she had just started to really process the stuff that happened with Alaska Airlines and the door plug blowing off of the MAX 9. And then that had led her down a rabbit hole of seeing some of the stuff that happened with the MAX 8 crashes, call it, 5 years ago now. And she's somebody who travels a lot, but it's like, hey, am I putting my family at risk putting them on the MAX 8 and the MAX 9? And after we got done with the discussion, her and I last night, I asked you this question this morning, and I asked my wife as well, would you fly a MAX 9 right now? And would you put your family on one? And, you and I sort of texted back and forth around the edges, and I loved your answer, which was, let's talk about it on the show. So you want to go first, or you want me to go first?
I feel like I always go first. You go first this time.
All right. So I'll go first, and I'll tell you what my wife said too. I have been on a MAX 9 and a MAX 8 since the door plug blew off at Alaska. And I have two schools of thought on it. First off is, I feel like on the MAX 8 side of things, I feel like there was a lot of attention to the type when the two crashes happened and we lost all those lives. That was tragic, but I think the airline industry has always shown tragedy leads to oversight and innovation. And sometimes it's too much red tape, but I do feel like that MAX 8 plane is more scrutinized than maybe, a 737-800 or a 777 or a 757 that might be 20 or 30 years old, because they feel like they've knocked all the bugs out. And then on the MAX 9, they just inspected the door plug on every single MAX 9. And along the way, they did inspect some other things because they weren't really sure if the door plug was the issue initially. There were some other questions and concerns. And so I actually feel like right now is one of the safer times to fly a MAX 9 because they were all just inspected. And when I asked my wife the same question, and she didn't know this, but she was actually on a MAX 9 after the door plug incident. We flew them in February. We flew the MAX 9 in February back from Orlando. Her comment, without hearing my answer, was, well, she goes, I know the FAA grounded the plane and I know they let it fly again. So I would imagine that they've taken a pretty hard look at those planes. So if they're okay with it, I'm okay with it. So that was where we both ended up on it. But I do think it's an interesting question if, smart travelers are having this discussion. So, where's your head on it?
Trying to remember all of the incidents that have occurred since January when the door plug, it's hard to say, even came out but wasn't bolted in.
Right.
How the plane took off with the door open, or the fake door open.
Hundreds
there's
of
been
times
that.
too.
There's been the wire harness that was chafed that caused the unintentional spoiler. That's the word I'm looking for. Spoiler
activation, maybe?
Activation, yeah. That caused that flight. There's been the rudder screw they had to go and inspect on everything. There was, what's the other thing that just happened? Oh, the rudder wouldn't respond upon landing, and the pilot had to use the tiller to keep it on the runway. There's a lot, right? And when you say not as much scrutiny as a 737-8 or 7, like those planes have been flying for 20 years. We're going to know everything that was the potential design flaw. We don't know everything yet on the Maxes, even though they're 5 years flying at this, 6 years flying at this point.
Yeah, probably more than yeah. I'll look it up while we're talking.
And even
I would guess it's probably 6 or 7. Yeah.
And maybe it's not design flaws we're talking about, but it seems to be a quality control issue, which after these things have occurred, the FAA has apparently gone into the Boeing factory, conducted 80-something audits, and Boeing failed almost 40 of those. So 40% of the quality audits failed because the workers were not, again, the quote was, the overwhelming majority of these failures are because of staff not following published procedures. And that's
right.
Procedural compliance is, going back to my Navy days, is everything in submarines and aviation. Procedural compliance. And for that fact, everything in maintenance on heavy equipment like ships and things that will kill you or blow up or destroy equipment or hurt people. So if that many people are not doing procedural compliance, that's how you lead to doors taking off that aren't bolted in. That's how you lead to who knows what happening. And if that is the quality of work that's being done, and again, my parents live in Charleston where the newer 787 assembly factory is, right at the Charleston airport, and that is in the news every single day for shoddy quality and Dreamliners deliveries being delayed because of things being wrong. So it does not seem to be a design thing here. It seems to be a quality thing. And that is what makes me nervous, is anything that's come out of the Boeing factory in the last however many years, the quality of it is going to have some problems. Like the math just shows that something on there is not going to be installed or assembled correctly. And that's where I get worried versus flying an older plane that's been in the air since, I think the 737-700 I flew home from Newark 2 weeks ago, like its first flight was in 1998. Like anything wrong with that plane would have been like it's almost at the end of its service life. It's going to have already showed up. So to answer the original question of will I fly that plane? Look, I think so. If there's a very comparable flight at the same time that's going to get me to the same place, then maybe I would make the effort to switch over. But it's something that's in the back of my head now. And so I think I would fly it. I would put the family on it. Again, the odds of anything happening are so incredibly low, ladies and gentlemen, like just so low, but it's just like a stress and a worry that maybe you don't want to have to just deal with when you're sitting there at cruise altitude. What makes me more upset is if you hadn't watched the Netflix documentary on Boeing, you need to go watch that and show how basically nobody's held accountable for those deaths of the two planes crashing. And it seems to have absolutely not changed whatsoever now, 6 years later. We're still shoddy works being done. Everything is the name of stock price and profits. And I don't think anybody's ever going to be held accountable for this kind of stuff unless we see like the lawsuits where they're being sued for $1 billion. And maybe $1 billion is enough to make Boeing wince, that they'll do something about it. I really hope that either the FAA, NTSB, government, Department of Justice, Department of Transportation work with Boeing and see what the heck is going on in these factories, what the heck is going on with these suppliers, and figure out how to make this a better culture where people are going to be happy to do the right thing. I mean, the latest news is the whistleblower has committed suicide in the middle of depositions. So it's just a apparently very unhealthy work environment from the outside looking in, and that is what needs to be addressed to give people confidence that they're going to go fly. And I would imagine the confidence of airlines to go and buy more Boeing airplanes, because the airlines are just beholden to the product that they're given. And like if I was an airline right now, those orders might be switching over to Airbus, or like I would be serious conversations with some not nice language asking the Boeing reps what the heck is going on, because you're putting the reputation of my airline at risk because of your products.
Well, it's part of the problem is that there aren't really delivery slots. Like at this point, you're sort of like United's been trying to negotiate for some A321 leases to replace the 737 MAX 10s that they don't want to take. So, I mean, both Airbus and Boeing are sort of maxed out on delivery slots. So that does complicate things. And I think the other thing, when we talk about Boeing, I think that's interesting to me, and I don't want to speculate too much on this because I think we need to hear more of the story. But you and I talked a little bit about this in text with Howie, this incident on the 787, the LATAM 787. And, apparently what's being reported is that a flight attendant was delivering a meal to a pilot, and that the flight attendant triggered a switch on the seat that moved the seat, causing the pilot to be knocked into the controls, causing the plane to end up in a dive that injured 50 passengers. And apparently there was a service memo sent out like 6 years ago to all 787 operators telling them about the switch and the switch cover and how to deal with it. Again, I don't want to jump ahead of the game here, but part of me says this doesn't add up. I've never, you've been in cockpits, the seats don't move that quickly when you hit the switch. No. So I'm sitting there going if there's a switch on the plane that will move the seat this quickly and the cover can snap off, then that needs to be rectified and it can't be a service bulletin. On the flip side, it still feels like there's a piece of that story to come, because I can't imagine that if it could cause that sort of damage, I'll be nobody died, but there were some serious injuries. If it could cause that level of damage, I can't imagine the FAA would allow just a service bulletin to say, hey, maybe you should fix the switch cover on this before you kill someone. So it's odd to me.
I have a lot of questions about that. Actually, having a buddy of mine is a Delta pilot. We're having a birthday little get together for him tonight, where there will be 4 or 5 other pilots. And I'm going to ask them specifically about this switch cover thing. Now, Delta doesn't fly 787, but they fly Boeings, and I'm sure they've read this as well, and they're going to have opinions and know what the heck is going on. My main question is, you're at cruise altitude when that happened. Assuming you're on autopilot, if you grab
why wouldn't autopilot?
You're on autopilot, then does that disengage autopilot? Again, these are the questions I'm going to ask tonight.
I thought
the answer is correct. If you were on autopilot and you grabbed the yoke, nothing would happen unless you went beyond some extreme limit or something that's there. I don't know.
And I thought, and I could be wrong about this, I thought that to disengage autopilot using the yoke, I thought you had to pull back, not push down. I thought the disengage motion started with pulling it back. And so you got to do something. Again, all these questions of what's involved. And you and I know pilots are, have tons of things to keep track of in the air. But I've been in that 787 cockpit. I actually was lucky enough to take off in a 787 cockpit when we were overseas doing a Norwegian UNICEF drive a number of years ago. And for the life of me, it's a big cockpit. It's a big plane. I'm just trying to figure out how the heck a piece of rubber chicken is the reason this plane took a dive and hurt 50 people.
Remember the story about the Egyptian pilot that had quote unquote company, some female company in the cockpit? And
check, please.
That's where I was okay, what's the real story here? How does a seat move? What's going on here? Let's get the real story.
Yeah, so more to come.
Yeah.
All right, well, that's a good place for us to tie it off. I know you got meetings and I've got meetings. I did want to bring up one other thing, but I didn't mention this to you. It's not a big deal, but I think I'm seriously looking forward to it. Have you heard about the new podcast that we get to listen to?
I saw that on Twitter yesterday and immediately followed it on Spotify. Yeah.
Yeah, so for folks who are nerds like Richard and I, there are a handful of people that I consider to be, very in tune with the technical and the aviation side of the industry. We've had Seth on here a handful of times, Seth Miller from Dots, Lines, and Destinations. He knows a lot about IFE, he knows a lot about, aviation, planes, all that stuff. 3 guys that I would put, at the top of that list: Brian Summers, Brett Snyder, Cranky Flyer, who we have had on the show, and John Ostrower, are all starting their own podcast. And so, it's called The Air Show. And when I heard about this, I was like this is an instant follow and an instant geek listen on a weekly basis.
Yeah, I saw that as well. Going to look forward to it, add it to the rotation. That's where I feel like I get most of my knowledge from that. Flight Radar 24 with Jacob. These podcasts are where I learn the aviation pure industry, not credit card, not loyalty side of things. So right there with you. Instant follow and ready to listen to that. Yeah, the nerd stuff. That makes
nerd.
There's been some really funny memes out there where it's me talking to my friends about aviation and they're just super bored and I'm super excited. And yeah, this is where the nerds go to hang out.
Yes. Yep, it is. All right. You staying home or you got travel?
I don't know, man. I think I'm going to be in New York City next week, so we'll see.
Excellent. You should delay it and come join me the following week.
Yeah, I should. Maybe I'll be there that week too. Who knows? We got a lot going on.
Yeah. So before you and I record again, I'll likely have at least a Reno and a Vegas. And depending on when we record, we should talk about schedule too. I've got a Disneyland trip coming up as well, and then on to New York. So lots of stuff to come. You and I might need to even double up for recording for spring break because Jeremiah, he wants to avoid us for a week. I can't figure out why anybody would want to avoid us for a week, but he's trying to get a few days away from us. And so we need to get a little ahead on some recording. So I think maybe talk a little Marriott Bonvoy, a little evergreen content for folks to go along with the Hilton episode that we did. A lot of stuff on our radar, man.
It is. We should talk about Bonvoy since you can get reasonable redemptions at Disney World now. I'm excited about that.
Now, like right now, we don't know if this will be true in a month. Let's just say this is the first time you and I have seen this since the merger, quite frankly. So it's been a while. Anyway, all that coming up on the radar. I've got my summer planning to do. I'm watching summer go from Houston to Honolulu to Tokyo and thinking about doing that in reverse this summer for our family Japan trip. Need to plan the rest of the summer trip. I somehow got roped into purchasing a registration for a 10K race at Disney this week. There's no guarantee I'm actually going to run it, to be clear. I've spent, it is a sunk cost now, so I don't know that I necessarily need to train, but you bought one too, right?
Yes, we will be doing the 10K. We did the 5K last year with all of us, and that was fun. Bumping it up to the 10K to see if Ed is going to be right behind me again 6 miles later this November.
I would say that I would absolutely guarantee that I won't be, because I think what's going to happen is my son wants to run the 10K. So if I do run it, my wife and daughter will run together because they're in shape. And then my son will not train at all. He'll do exactly what I did, train zero. And then whatever that day is, he'll probably want to take pictures of the characters and all that stuff. And me being the helicopter dad, I will not want to just leave him on a random 10K course in some back parking lot of Epcot or Magic Kingdom. So I will finish wherever my son finishes, and I doubt that will be right behind you. But I'll catch a blue Gatorade with you, and then our celebratory glass of very expensive champagne and whatever beer it was you drank last time.
Yeah, not expensive, but not nice. But it was the best tasting beer to drink at 6 a.m. in the Epcot parking lot after running a 5K. So it should be twice as delicious after running twice as far in November.
There you go. All right, lots of stuff coming down the pike. As Richard said, we're going to talk a little bit of Bonvoy coming up in the future. All that and a whole lot more until we upload again. We've got miles to go. Nerd.